More fallout from the overtime loss to the Cleveland Browns and an update on Tristan Wirfs' injury. How long will he be out, and what does that do to the Buccaneers moving forward? We tell you right now. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. David Harrison. He covers the Bucs for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation's BucsGameDay.com. And of course, you can follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. And real quick, I would like to divulge a private conversation that David and I had when he called me last week.
I don't approve of this.
He called me last week and he said, I will never take any of your college football analysis seriously because you picked Michigan to win in a high-scoring game. And everyone knows that if Michigan wins, it's going to be because they run the ball and keep the score low.
Listen, I was not aware at the time that Ohio State did not have a secondary. Thank you all for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first view or listen of the day. The biggest news coming out of this game, obviously, was the fact that there are some coaches who should not be coaches. But actually, it was more so that right tackle Tristan Wirfs was injured in overtime, which is why you don't want to play overtime. He was eventually carted off the field, which is, again, why you don't want to play in overtime. There was some optimism that the injury wasn't as severe as it was initially thought. We do have an update per Ian Rappaport, who gets all the good updates and confirmed by many others after the fact. Wirfs is expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks with an ankle injury, not anything that could have been much worse. Look, obviously, you need Tristan Wirfs. You know what I mean? As much as you can get him, you want to have him out there just as much as you want to have Ryan Jensen. The way I'm looking at this, listen, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, more than I ever expected, are legitimately the LeBron James Los Angeles Lakers. So take a cue from Lakers fans and basically just ignore the regular season, tie no strings to it, bet no money on it, tie no fantasy futures to it, and just wait for the playoffs. And for some reason, expect your team to turn it on in the playoffs. Here's the thing about the LeBron James Lakers, though, if you're a basketball fan. Sometimes they don't even make it to the playoffs. Sometimes they get bounced out of the playoffs unceremoniously, and sometimes they win a championship. So there's a 2/3 possibility that you're going to be disappointed anyway. But as of right now, that analogy that I made early in the offseason or in the preseason, honestly, like I didn't realize how accurate that was. Now that they're without Tristan Wirfs, I mean, that's like the equivalent of the LeBron James Lakers being without AD, except that Tristan Wirfs would thank the Buccaneers before he expected a tribute video from them after leaving the team. Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's just not good news, but just be thankful that you're in the NFC slouch division and that everybody expects the New Orleans Saints to hand you an easy win next week on Monday Night Football, even though everybody will probably expect the Buccaneers to hand Andy Dalton like the only good primetime win he'll ever have in his career.
Oh, and I'm sure Marshawn Lattimore will make a miraculous recovery to come back for that game.
Yes.
So yeah, if Wirfs misses those 4 games, that means they are going to be without him against the Saints, who, despite their struggles, still have a solid pass rush. The San Francisco 49ers, that's not good.
Not a Merry Christmas.
The Cincinnati Bengals, that's just as bad as the 49ers. And then the Arizona Cardinals, which, all right, cool, whatever. It's the Arizona Cardinals. So the Bucs are staring down the barrel right now of 2-2, 1-3, if they keep playing the way that they are, and 1-3 puts them at what, 7-9?
Yeah. Buccaneers fans, you hear that beeping? That is your favorite team firmly backing their way into the postseason.
Yes, it is. But all you need is an invitation to the tournament so that things like what happened Sunday can happen again because this coaching staff continues to be completely and totally inept. For those of you that missed yesterday's episode, you can go back and listen to me go on an absolute tirade about how dumb Todd Bowles is when it comes to the world of clock management. But I'd like to revisit the game quickly before I let David react, because there's something I didn't get to that I also think was a massively crucial moment in the game. And I think a lot of you know where I'm going with this. With 13 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter, the Buccaneers were facing 4th and 2 from the Cleveland 37-yard line.
Yeah.
Do they go for it? No.
Yes.
No, they don't. They line up to try to draw the Browns offside, proceed to take the delay of game, punt the ball, which ends up being a touchback. And so the Browns get it at the 20-yard line. So they basically gained what is that? 17 yards of field position. Once again, you are dealing with the greatest quarterback to ever play. You have Chris Godwin, who is on an absolute heater.
Yeah. And
you mean to tell me that you're not going to go for 2 yards at that moment in the game? According to ESPN analytics, the Buccaneers had an 80% win probability on that 4th and 2.
Yep.
Todd Bowles has no guts. He has he's a coward.
You know what? He's not a coward, but he is doing something that I'm going to talk about in our Stash or Trash It segment, so I'm not going to spoil it too much. But I think I have a theory on why he did what he did, but it doesn't excuse it. Don't get me wrong. I have a theory on why I think he did it. It does not excuse, even if I'm right, it does not excuse him doing it. Bottom line, like you said, you have the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. You have Mike Stinkin' Evans. You have Chris Godwin, who one of the most talented receivers in the NFL, but specifically in this game, balling out.
Yeah.
You have Cam Brate, who can post up Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, which shout out Jonathan Vilma. Bro, you got to learn how to say the name. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It ain't that hard. And you have Rachaad White, who finished the game with a 4.6 yards per carry average. And you have Keefe, who could probably fullback you 2 yards if you really needed it. The funniest thing about that entire exchange, James, actually, is as they're coming to the line of scrimmage, and shout out to the broadcast team because they showed it on television and they tried to say, oh, look, Byron's telling Tom, just go, go, go. No. Byron wasn't saying go, go, go. He was saying, no, don't snap the ball. Go back and watch it and read his lips. He's saying to Tom Brady, no, don't snap the ball. Why would you say no, don't snap the ball to somebody? Because they want to snap the ball. Why do they want to snap the ball on 4th and 2, James? Because they want to go for it. Why do they want to go for it? Because they're Tom stinking Brady. And you're telling Tom Brady, no, don't snap the ball on 4th and 2. And not only that, but you're doing it without your mouth covered. Byron. Like, come on, dude. There's a reason. Everybody, like, when you see somebody like an SNL sketch of an NFL coach or a football coach on the sideline, what are they doing? They hold the massive menu play card over their mouth while they're talking, right? Why? So that your lips can't be read. You're literally sitting there on the sideline with Tom Brady looking at you going, hey, I want to run a play, going, no, don't snap the ball. And then you expect the Cleveland Browns to jump off sides. Like, come on, dude. Like, people are smarter than that. And yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And, the defense on it is going to be, well, at that time, our defense was doing really well, so we're confident that they can stop them and keep them from scoring. Well, if you're confident in your defense, and go for it on 4th and 2, because if you don't get it, you're confident in your defense, you get the ball back. If you know what I'm saying? Like, it makes no sense. And it's just one small nugget in a game that was literally given away. Shaquille Barrett, after the loss of the Pittsburgh Steelers, stood in the locker room and told all of us in the scrum, we gave this game away. We gave this game to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was talking about the players. This game was given away to the Cleveland Browns by the coaches. If any of these guys come up for jobs in the offseason, the Cleveland Browns should give them signing bonuses for wherever they go and thank them for the win. And Jacoby Brissett needs to send them all muffin baskets because he might get a starting job next year in the National Football League as a bridge quarterback based off of this game alone. But they're not going to get James's rental cars.
No, they're not.
That's an awkward transition. But this episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by Turo, the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can buy any car you want. Rather, you can book any car you want, not buy any car you want, wherever you want, and it comes from a community of local hosts. So you're dealing with people who cherish the cars, love the cars, own the cars, browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion and any budget across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for that special event or date night. Get anything you want, birthday, holiday, whatever. If you want to test drive an electric vehicle before you dive into the electric car revolution that I am so firmly fighting, by all means, hit Turo and you can definitely do that. Most Turo drivers can deliver the car right to you. I had a Turo driver deliver the car to the Indianapolis airport for me when I went down there to cover the Commanders and Colts game. Commanders, for those you don't know, a team that's winning football games. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions do apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. Thanks again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listener, first view every single day. You can't tell, we're all in a little bit of a bad mood. But Bucs Nation, Bucs fans, I think you're right there with us. There are some out there who think that the Bucs defense is in trouble as well as the offense. We're going to dive into that conversation here in just a little bit. But of course, we do appreciate you being with us. After this show, make sure you're also checking out Locked On Sports Today. Go beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes of the biggest stories, biggest games with local experts. The only Locked On can give you Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Time to stash it and trash it. I'm going to start with my stash it, James. And surprise, surprise, it's Arizona State rookie running back Rachaad White. 14 carries, 64 yards. Like I mentioned, 4.6 yards per carry. Added 9 catches for 45 yards. 5 yards per catch average. Not great, but serviceable. 23 total touches, 109 yards. Back-to-back weeks, setting career highs in yards from scrimmage, according to my producer behind the scenes. So, yeah, want to see more Rachaad White. We wanted to see more Rachaad White coming out of the bye. We got it. Look, not celebrating, Leonard Fournette's ailments or injuries or anything like that, but we wanted to see, could Rachaad White come out and be a legitimate number one running back for this team? And I think he's proven that, yes, he absolutely can. Still looking to see Leonard Fournette get in the mix when he's healthy. Keyshawn Vaughn got some touches as well. So, not saying that this just needs to be the guy, but I think right now, if you're, playing fantasy football out there, you can probably start Rachaad White with at least some confidence that he's going to get a good amount of value or volume.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I did start Rachaad White in my fantasy league per my co-host recommendation, though it also helped that it was announced that Leonard Fournette would be out. So that gave me the full-blown confidence, because if there's one thing I know about this coaching staff is that they will focus on a lesser player at a position out of sheer spite. We'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, Rachaad White continues to show exactly the kind of running back he can be, and I love to see it. My stash is the pass rush. David, you and I, and as well as Evan Klosky and I, discussed some concerns after Shaq Barrett went down with that injury. Who's going to step up? How are the Bucs going to be able to get after the quarterback without their number one pass rusher? Well, they've been doing an absolutely outstanding job, and Sunday was no different. 20 pressures, 11 quarterback hits, 4 sacks, and numerous guys getting involved. You had Carl Nassib, Anthony Nelson, Nacho was getting in there. Of course, you had your usual suspects, Vita Vea generating pressure, Devin White generating pressure, but then you also had guys like Keanu Neal, who was getting after it too. So they're bringing the pressure from all different angles, trying to compensate for the lack of having Shaq Barrett. And so far, they're doing a pretty good job. If only the offense would be able to put up, more than 20 points, or the coaches knew how to call a timeout.
Yeah, listen, not a perfect effort by the defense, right? But you don't need it to be perfect. You need it to be effective. You need it to be good enough to get you a win. And anytime you hold a team, an NFL team, under 20 points in 4 quarters of play, you deserve to come away with a victory, especially when Tom Brady's your quarterback. And again, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are your receivers, among other playmakers. And you have a running back with 100 yards from scrimmage. I mean, come on. Like, you got to win that game. And that leads us to my trash it. And this is what I kind of teased in the first segment. Todd Bowles wants a defensive-minded team. He wants a defense-first team. The problem is he's forcing this team to be defensive-minded. He's not coaching the team he has. He's coaching the team he wants. James, how many consecutive plays to start a game on offense do you think a team with Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Rachaad White should have that are either runs or short passes?
How many games have they played now?
How many plays should you have before you get to a deep pass attempt is basically the way I'll ask the question. At the most, max.
5.
22. 22 plays the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ran in a row that were either runs or short passes before they got to their 23rd play, which was a deep pass. Now, why do you do that? You do that because you're a defensive first team. You're a defensive team. You want to control the clock. You want to run the clock. You want to run the ball. You want to use the passing game as an extension of the running game. That's what you want as a head coach. So what you do if you're Todd Bowles, and this is what you want, is you handcuff your offense and force them to contain themselves, thereby doing 35 to 45% of the opposing defense's job for them. Putting a lid on your own defense. The Browns don't got to worry about keeping a lid on the Bucs offense because Todd Bowles going to do it for you.
It's like having a Corvette and never taking it out of second gear.
Absolutely. I'm not saying you got to go deep every shot or every play. Not saying you got to go deep every drive even. But 22 straight plays. Now, they may not have gone 22 straight plays. Here's the problem. Here's the benefit of the problem. The Buccaneers scored a touchdown on their first drive of the game, and they did it, honestly, fairly easily, right?
Yeah.
What does that tell Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich? Oh, well, we can do this for the entire game. That's why I think you get 22 straight plays. If the Bucs actually don't score a touchdown on the first drive, maybe they actually open it up a little bit faster than they did. But even then, they opened it up for a stretch, right? And I didn't do all the math on all the stretches, right? But we saw them. They opened it up a little bit, and they started moving the ball, and they started scoring a little bit of points. Why you do an end around with Julio Jones? I don't know, but that's a conversation for a different day.
It worked, though.
It did work. I will give them credit. It did work, but it would have worked better with a few other guys. But
maybe that's why it worked.
Game,
maybe that's why it worked, just because they
nobody expected it. I was like, why would they do that with Julio Jones? But then what do we see at the end of the game? They tighten right back up. Why? Because Todd Bowles wants to win with defense. Todd Bowles doesn't want to win with Tom Brady. He doesn't want to win with the offense. He doesn't want to win by outscoring people and putting them in bad situations. He wants to score by controlling the clock, controlling the ball, being uber safe, and letting the defense rule the day. That is what Todd Bowles wants. The problem is he has an offense, like you said, a Corvette that's just begging. Somebody hit that clutch. Somebody put us in gear and let us go. And I go back to Tom Brady on 4th and 2. What is happening? His offensive coordinator is yelling at him from the sideline. No, don't snap the ball. This coaching staff is the problem with why this offense is barricaded. I said it in Pittsburgh. I felt like Tom wasn't confident in the offensive line, and neither was Byron. And I meant it at the time. Look, this offensive line play has actually gotten a little bit better. I'm not saying they're great, but they've gotten better.
Get worse, but
now they're going to get worse because they don't have Tristan, right? But they have gotten better up to this point. The coaching staff is still putting a lid on this offense, and that is a major, major problem moving forward.
Well, that segues perfectly into my trash it, and that it's a prime example of putting a lid on this offense. Trash it. I like him. Talked to him yesterday, but Cameron Brate, 5 targets, 2 receptions, 15 yards, had a drop that would have moved the ball a little bit closer for a long suck-up field goal attempt at the end of regulation. If I didn't see the snap counts for the game, I would have had no idea that K-Dot even played. And I know people are sick of hearing me talk about him, but I talk about him for a reason. I talk about him for the same reason that you talked about Rachaad White so much leading up to the season. It's because he is good at what he does.
Yeah.
And you want a legitimate threat out there, a legitimate pass-catching threat that we saw unleashed for a couple of weeks, and it worked. He was the Bucs' leading receiver like 3 weeks ago. Not a single target. But did you know that he was on the field for 52% of snaps and Cameron Brate was only on the field for 51? Because I didn't. I was there.
No.
Trash.
Ty Miller was on the field for 3 snaps. Look, these are 2 guys that helped you get those wins against Los Angeles and against Seattle. You're trying to come out of the bye rolling into a deeper win streak. The Atlanta Falcons lose. The San Francisco 49ers lose. The Carolina Panthers beat the only team worse than any team in the NFC South, and that's the Denver Broncos. Hooray for them. You're still irrelevant. But you completely go away from what's been winning you games.
Which is why I'm so concerned that with as well as Rachaad White has played, as soon as Leonard Fournette is back, Rachaad White's opportunities are going to get diced down to the minimum. And it's because this coaching staff doesn't have a freaking clue. All right. We have a couple of voicemails coming up in just a moment. I know we ran long on Stash It and Trash It, but this episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you are going to love. Find Block Forever now wherever you get podcasts. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, and former pros across the league to get real about what happens on the field and behind the scenes, inside locker rooms, during team meetings, and back at the team hotel. Ryan and guests discuss topics like player psyches, sports betting, playing through pain, being a leader, and how to deal with combative teammates. Here, there is nothing out of bounds. Catch the full Block Forever series available anywhere you get your podcast, available everywhere. Now, Audible, get in the game. Wrapping things up here on a very frustrated episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And let's go ahead and get to one voicemail. I'm already in a bad mood. Let's go ahead and hear from our good buddy, Mad Dog in Orlando, who literally just wants to watch my head explode on YouTube. So let's fire up that beautiful bean footage.
Hey, gents. This is Mad Dog again from Orlando. I just had epiphany. I'm saying that word right. But what do you think about Sean Payton taking over? I'm not one for changing coaches after 1 year, but honestly, the performance so far this year has given me pause and reevaluated how important Bruce Arians was. And maybe if we bring Sean Payton and some juice in, we'll get a more energetic and less lethargic performance. Your thoughts? Go Bucs, fire the cannons.
All right, Mad Dog, thank you very much for the call. And look, oh boy, anybody who has watched or listened to this podcast for any length of time knows how I feel about Sean Payton. I despise him. I despise him with every fiber of my being. That said, he and Tom like one another. And there aren't a whole lot of situations that he could walk into that already have the offensive firepower in place that the Buccaneers do, that already have a really solid, really tough, really physical defense that his New Orleans Saints teams had emulated for years under his advisement and illegal payouts.
Motivation.
Here's the problem with Sean Payton becoming the Buccaneers head coach. He's already been linked to a couple of other teams if he returns in 2023. Chargers, Cardinals.
Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys. He is still under contract with the New Orleans Saints for the next 2 years. So anybody that hires Sean Payton has to give up compensation to get him. Next year, the New Orleans draft picks are a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh. In 2024, they have a first, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and 2 sixths. There have been 5 coaches in NFL history that have been traded. This was the compensation given up for him. You had Belichick traded from the Jets to the Patriots. The Jets got a first in 2000, a fourth and a seventh in 2001. The Pats got a fifth in 2001 and a seventh in 2002. Obviously,
7 Super Bowls.
John Gruden was traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 2 firsts, a second, and $8 million. Herm Edwards was traded from the Jets to the Chiefs for a 4th rounder. Mike Holmgren was traded from the Packers to the Seahawks for a 2nd rounder. And to bring it all full circle, Bill Parcells was traded from the Patriots to the Jets, and it cost the Patriots, it cost the Jets a third and fourth rounder in 97, a second rounder in 98, and a first rounder in 1999. Those prices all go up because of inflation and the fact that they would be trading their head coach to a division rival. So you're looking at probably a minimum of what you gave Gruden and probably more going to the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, and I can't stand him. He's a jerk. All right, David, stock up, stock down. I'm going to start things off. Stock up is Keanu Neal, who finished the day with 8 tackles, a half of a sack. Could have had a sack and a half, but he missed the tackle on the first one. Luckily, I believe it was Anthony Nelson that came and cleaned things up for him. And 2 quarterback hits. So he stepped in for Antoine Winfield Jr. when Winfield left in the first half, being evaluated for a concussion. Winfield came back, but they kept incorporating Keanu Neal. Really, really played well. And I think that stock's going up for him a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. My stock up is going to be wide receiver Chris Godwin. I talked about it on our Thursday episode. Up till this weekend, no 100-yard games, only 1 touchdowns, 3 games under 60% catch rate. Wiped all that off the board. He got his first 100-yard game, and he got another touchdown for the team. And you know what? I said if he did all those things, James, that the Buccaneers would probably win, and they should have. So I'm still going to take the win. And my victory lap, here we go. Okay, I'm back. Chris Godwin, stock up.
My stock down was my predicted player of the game, Mike Evans. 9 targets, 2 receptions, 31 yards, was targeted on multiple deep passes. Brady went for it all. Like, what was that? Like the third play of overtime. For whatever reason, the connection was not there. Mike Evans looked incredibly frustrated both during and after the game. And I don't know. Maybe it goes back to what you were talking about in the last segment where you have these long stretches where they're not airing it out. So that chemistry, that connection that he and Brady had down to an absolute work of art, it's not there because they're not doing it enough. They're out of practice, and now the timing is thrown off. Everything is thrown through a loop. So need to see Mike get back on track. However, congratulations to him for being just the 6th wide receiver in NFL history to have 10,000 receiving yards and 75 touchdowns in his first 9 seasons. Elite company that he joined in that one. So, I'll bet you know who he is now, don't you, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints?
Goat's doing goat stuff. My stock down, it's going to be Todd Bowles. And look, I will admit to you guys, I haven't been a Todd Bowles defender that much on this show, but I have been hesitant to jump on the pile on top of Todd Bowles and the job he's done as a head coach. But if I ever needed a bigger piece of evidence for why an NFL head coach has no business being a coordinator, this would be it. And I know that there are some head coaches who have been coordinators as well or play callers for their teams, and they've done a splendid job. And I understand that. But I would say that more often than not, in some way, shape, or form, it's going to cause a problem and it's going to bite you in the butt. And I think with Todd Bowles, it is happening. If you're going to be a defensive coordinator, be a defensive coordinator, but don't be a head coach. If you want to be a head coach, you need to have a defensive coordinator, because right now, all this coach is seeing is defense, and you're seeing that in his gameplay decisions, and it's hurting this team, and it cost them a win on Sunday. And in this division, I mean, heaven help us if the Saints come into Ray J next Monday night and come away with a win. You could legitimately cost your team a playoff spot.
The only thing that's going to save the Bucs, if anything saves the Bucs on Monday, is the fact that it's primetime Dalton. That's the only thing that can counteract the sheer ineptitude and cowardice that we have seen.
Absolutely. And I want to say something, because we've had some consistent listeners and we have some newer listeners. You guys who are consistent know it's not that I don't pile on coaching because I'm just like this huge defender of coaches and never want. It's because I don't see how the sausage is made completely. It's a lot easier to see a player who missed an assignment or missed a call, or like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Levante David deciding that they don't want to contain in the first quarter during a touchdown run, something like that. It's a lot easier to see that and call that out publicly. It's not harder to see what's happening behind the scenes with the coaching staff. But what we're seeing the last few weeks, even in the wins, honestly, there are moments, and especially this game in Cleveland, you can see that. It's obvious. It's evident. And then you hear Todd get asked the questions. And they're questions that you got to know are coming. And he has no answer. Because, I mean, the answer he get, like, James, you asked me, we were talking before we hit record, and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember the answer he gave us during the press conference right after the game about the timeout situation. I said, yeah, the answer that made no sense. Like, it reminded me of, the jokes of the math equations of, what's X if X equals 2 times pi plus the square root of the roof colored purple. Like, it made no sense. It was just nonsensical. Todd Bowles looks out of his depth. He looks in over his head, and it sucks because I really had high hopes for him. I really wanted him to be successful.
Me too.
But that's not going to keep me from pointing out what is blatantly clear, and that is that he is out of his depth and in over his head, and someone needs to save him. BA, Byron, Tom, Jason, somebody, one of the Glazers fly on down, you know what I mean, from Manchester United. Someone needs to come save Todd Bowles.
And something that I mentioned, I can't remember if I mentioned it on the Monday episode, but I did mention it on Locked On Sports today with Peter Bukowski. He's not going anywhere as long as BA is part of that organization. That's the other problem. They're not going to fire BA's guy as long as BA is a consultant for the team. Thank you to Mad Dog for calling in. My apologies to Tyler and Billy that David and I, we talked a lot on this episode, wanted to get to you guys. So my apologies, but thank you for calling in, and please continue to do so. Billy, I saw that you sent in two. Might be able to get to the other one with my buddy Evan Klosky tomorrow on WTSP Wednesday. I'm sure he will have plenty to say about all this, as I have plenty to say to him about Saturday's result. But we want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view of the day. Now, for the biggest headlines in all sports, make sure your second listen is Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Check out David's work over at BucsGameDay.com. Check out my work over at BucsNation.com. Follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire those cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.